Hello students, a very good evening. I'm here to continue our lectures on Aristotle's Poetics. Today I'm here to discuss the topic of relation of the tragic action and the character. So let me share my presentation now. Before that, let me remind you one thing. I hope you are all going through my lectures, and your examinations are scheduled from the end of February. Main examinations and your mid semesters, first mid sem should be in the second or third week of December, which will be online. This I have informed to those students who have attended to the classes today. Now, let us go through the lecture. Let me share my screen now. I hope my screen is visible to you. So today we are going to discuss this tragic action and character. So how these two are related. So the tragic action, because we are dealing with the tragedy, and as I have told you earlier, for Aristotle, tragedy is the noblest of all the genres, and he considers that tragedy is the imitation of what you say, noble actions, or serious actions, or noble actions, or important actions. Okay, so tragedy is the imitation of action. It is rather good action. Rather than saying action simply, we can say it is good action. It is a play in which great moral issues are involved. So in tragedies, there are many moral issues are involved and matters of the greatest possible importance to human life, which can be made plain in basically good characters. So we have seen actually what are the what you say relation of character and the plot. Actually, I told you what Aristotle states regarding the character of the characters. That means to say that a tragedy will be having a contemplation of more moral issues which are very important to the humankind, or the human race, the whole human race. Tragedies are not for a single human being. The tragic hero is a hero for a group of people, or for a nation, or in fact more than a nation also. So great moral issues are involved, and matters of the greatest possible importance to human life. Take for example King Oedipus. Okay, how Oedipus, the tragedy happens. Oedipus, who conquered the kingdom of Thebes, who becomes the king, immediately have to transform from happiness to misery because of some of his doings, which he did not intentionally, but with without knowing or without knowledge. But his moral is such, or his character is such, that he what you say, proceeds to suffer himself or punish himself, which brings the feeling of pity in us. So actually, that is why here I have written like this: matters of greatest possible importance to human life, which can be made plain in basically good characters. King Oedipus is a good character in spite of his incestuous marriage with his mother. We have to consider King Oedipus as a good character only. Once we watch the tragedy, or when we read the tragedy, we will understand why we can consider Oedipus as a good character, because he sacrificed his personal happiness, or convenience, or being the king, the kingdom, okay, the throne, etc., for the sake of the people of the kingdom. This is the quality of the hero. This kind of hero, who is a great magnanimous person, will be moving from happiness to misery. This is what actually brings a kind of feeling sympathy or pity in us. Okay, for Aristotle, tragic action is always interconnected and dependent on the character. Okay, that too, good character of the dramatic personages are especially the hero, who is termed as a tragic hero. So the tragic action becomes important only because good characters are involved in that. Good people are involved in that. And their actions actually affect not one person or a few people, but a great, what you say, nation or a great race can be affected by his action. So the tragic action is created, is brought into a tragedy through the character of the dramatic personage who is called as a tragic hero. See, in chapter 15, Aristotle says that in treating dramatic characters, characters here, I mean ethical natures. This I have already discussed in the previous lecture, and I hope you remember that when Aristotle stated that there may be a tragedy without a character, so here that means the tragedies which are not showing the ethical natures of its dramatic personages. Okay, that we have discussed in detail in the previous lecture. Now here Aristotle says that in treating dramatic characters, that is their ethical natures, there are 4 points to aim at when the poet is writing a tragedy. In treating the ethical natures of the dramatic personage, the poet has to keep in mind the four points. What are they? You can read on the slide. That is goodness of the character, appropriate characters, like they, likeness. Here I wrote like reality, or they should be consistent. Based upon this, we have four attributes for the character. The characters here means uh, characters is a dramatic personages, the characters who are being shown in the play. Okay, there are 4 points: that the character should be good, that they should be appropriate, that they should be like reality, and they should be consistent. Okay, that in treating dramatic characters, there are 4 points we have to aim at. Here actually, dramatic characters or the dramatic personages, they should be good, they should be appropriate, they should be like the reality, they should be consistent in their treatment. So next, let us see the first attribute of the character according to Aristotle, that is goodness of character. Why a character in a drama or in a tragedy should be good? Okay, he says that goodness is essential to Aristotle's whole theory because it is the foundation of that initial sympathy in spectator or reader. Okay, we go and watch movies when the hero is usually a good man. So when the hero suffers, actually we also feel that suffering, or the heroine. You take the heroine, the character of the heroine, when the heroine is going through suffering or ordeal, etc., we also try to feel that. Many people go to theater and they keep on sobbing, okay, crying when the sympathetic or pathetic scenes are being shown in the movie, or even in the dramas. When dramas are being staged also, if the dramatic personages are acting in a lively manner, in a fitting manner to that character which they are playing, we will be will get what you say, immersed in that character, and we'll start feeling whatever the dramatic personage is exhibiting or enacting on the screen or on the stage. So goodness of a character is necessary so to create a feeling of sympathy in us, in readers, or in spectators. And Aristotle feels that without which the tragic emotions cannot be roused or the tragic pleasure ultimately conveyed. If you are not feeling what you say sympathetic towards those who are suffering in the drama or in the tragedy, this feeling of tragic emotions cannot get roused in you, and you cannot what you say undergo this feeling of a tragic pleasure. It will not be conveyed to you. And actually, Aristotle, to propose this goodness of character, thinks that all human beings are having a balanced moral attitude. Okay, in the spectators, here it is written as a spectators, but Aristotle, as a philosopher, as we have seen in the Nicomachean Ethics also, he thinks that all human beings are having a moral attitude only, a balanced moral attitude. It is to say, to put it in simple terms, like you will not laugh when the other person is crying, okay, or you will not cry when the other person is laughing or happy. If at all you are doing so, you have to think twice of your mentality, or you have to go and consult a psychiatrist. It is not good, because I told you many times that human emotions are there, which are not negative or positive on themselves. It is the degree of what you say levels in which we take those emotions, that they will prove sometimes good, sometimes bad, etc. So Aristotle actually is assuming a balanced moral attitude in the spectators, and because of which they they cannot sympathize with the depraved or odious. Actually, no one will sympathize with the villain. Okay, the villain character, the depraved or odious characters are nothing but our modern villains. You will show sympathy on the hero who is suffering for a universal cause, or for the cause of a community, or for a good cause for that matter. So we'll be showing the sympathies. And there is villain. This villain, we will not show sympathy towards the villain only because of the balanced moral attitude that is existing in our hearts. That is what Aristotle believes. And Aristotle, as a philosopher, believes in the goodness of the humanity as such. And that is why in Nicomachean Ethics, we have seen that Aristotle states that we are not good or bad by nature. What makes us good or bad are only our actions. He says everything is in action. If you keep on doing good things, a bent of goodness will develop in you. If you keep on doing bad things, a bent of badness will develop in you. So, like in the similar manner, Aristotle actually is considering all human beings having a balanced what you say moral attitude, so that they will take the sympathy with the suffering hero, and they will not sympathize the depraved or odious characters. So sympathy, he says, that is a special kind of pity. You feel pity. You feel pity. If you look at an orphan, you feel pity. This emotion, what is pity, you will understand when you look at someone who is very appearing in rags and not having food, very thin, etc. And looking at the beggars, we feel pity sometimes. And looking at the people who are suffering, or looking at the people who are crying because of the loss they have incurred in their lives, etc., we feel a kind of pity. And this is nothing but sympathy. And he says sympathy towards good people, or people with good nature, is the basis of the whole tragic pleasure. Whatever you get, the tragic pleasure, regarding tragic pleasure, or the pleasure we derive when we actually look at the suffering person, the suffering man or woman or child, etc., while watching a movie, that is a different, because of the feelings of pity or emotions of pity in us. That is, we will discuss when we come to this concept called as catharsis. But for now, it will let us take whatever pleasure you derive watching a tragedy or a drama which is a tragedy, and it gives you a sort of pleasure. I need not explain it further, because you very well know, when you go and watch a movie that is having a sad ending, or I can take the example of the dramas that you have gone through in your first year. Take for example Hamlet. If the Hamlet, but for the language barrier, if you know the language very well, if you are well versed in the language and could read the drama completely for yourself, I am sure you will get a sort of pleasure, which is like the tragic pleasure, because at the end, what you find in Hamlet is all deaths or dead bodies, corpses on the stage. Looking at that scene, what kind of feeling you undergo, that is what is called the tragic pleasure. And there you may take, you sympathize with the character of Hamlet, who could not take revenge at the appropriate time with his uncle, and he it costed many lives at the end of the drama, like this. The tragic pleasure, to give you an example of how you feel the tragic pleasure, I have given this example. And when you watch movies also, you can notice or observe what kind of feelings you are undergoing while looking at the people who are suffering. So that is the feeling of sympathy, which is a special kind of pity in us, that Aristotle says. Okay, so that is why a drama, especially a tragedy, needs the suffering of a good man. If that good, the character of good is not there, we may not get the tragic pleasure. Okay, the bad man falling from happiness to misery arouses some kind of human feeling in us, but not pity. See, for example, if the villain is getting punished, all people sitting in the hall, or sitting and watching the dramas, will clap, or instead laugh, and they may say it is fitting, it is fitting to this man who was very villainous, etc. So the bad man, if he is falling from happiness to misery, that will not create in us the sort of what you call as the tragic pleasure, but the vice versa. That means a good man, if he is falling from happiness to misery, will bring the tragic pleasure. And tragedy by nature, by definition, according to Aristotle, is this only. Okay, this feeling of pity intensifies if that good man is a relative or family member or an acquaintance or a close friend. Okay, watching it, the drama of Oedipus, Oedipus suffering, we will also suffer along with him. Though we know that Oedipus is not our family member, or an acquaintance or a close friend, but there it is a king. Of course, the king and the subjects will have a bond, and that bond is what, actually brings out the feelings of sympathy, which is a kind of pity in us. Okay, and if this feeling of pity increases further, if that suffering good man is a relative or a family member or a close friend, or a known person. An acquaintance means a known person to us. Of course, this is what Aristotle says, that the tragic action and character are related in this way. So the tragic action is caused only because of the characters which are good in nature. Okay, of course. It doesn't mean that all characters will be good only in a drama. So Aristotle did not say that all characters in a drama should be good. He never said. And moreover, he says badness, real baseness, depravity, wickedness may be necessary in some tragedies. You may have some, you take the example of Hamlet, you have many characters which are wicked, like Claudius, okay, and others. Okay, so tragedies, of course, need all the, this is the synonyms like badness, real baseness, depravity, wickedness is only degrees, of increasing badness, and they also may occur in tragedy. And Aristotle says that action of a play as a whole should be good. Okay, the action of a play of a tragedy as a whole should be good, and the personages within it should be necessarily good, but in so far as the action requires, bad, depraved, wicked characters may also occur. This is further explanation of the point I have stated earlier. And Aristotle says that a tragedy, of course, will not have only good characters, but it will also have bad characters. Okay. If, for Aristotle, goodness is not merely performing one's duties. This we have seen in the Nicomachean Ethics. And he says goodness is the habitual possession of one or more of the separate virtues such as courage, temperance, liberality, magnificence, gentleness, truthfulness, and even wittiness. So, character or goodness is not an entity which is defined in one words or two words. Okay, goodness of a human being is not merely performing one's duties. I'm a teacher, and if I am performing my duty of teaching, it is not goodness. I have some other added responsibilities as a teacher, that whenever my students come to me, I should be friendly with them, or I should be giving the guidance that they seek from me, and I have to rise to the occasion whenever it is required as a teacher, with my students. Like that, for Aristotle, goodness is not just performing the duties, but you must have these virtues like courage, temperance, liberality, magnificence, gentleness, truthfulness, and even some kind of wittiness. If a teacher is not at all gentle, he may not take care of the dull students, or students who are having some problems. Okay, so it is not merely performing one's duties is considered as goodness. For Aristotle's, the character, the comprehensive definition of character that we have seen according to the Nicomachean Ethics of Aristotle, you should recollect here. Okay, a mere absence of vice is not virtue of goodness according to Aristotle. See here, it is not half off, but it is or. Okay, he says that a mere absence of vice is not, cannot be considered as a virtue or goodness. Okay, because character, according to Aristotle's definition, is action. Okay, if you remain inactive without doing any vice, there you may not be considered as good according to Aristotle. As some forms of Hebraic and Christian moralities ascertain negative virtue, that is the avoidance of sin, is not goodness for Aristotle. Just whatever God says is a sin, if you don't do that, you will not become a good person. Your goodness comes out in your actions according to Aristotle. So for him, a good man is not good unless he is desiring specific positive good ends and working toward their attainment. So he says that a person is not cannot be considered as a good person, and until he has a desiring specific positive good ends and working towards their attainment. He should be working towards the attainment of these good ends, goals, or whatever he sets for his benefit or to the benefit of the group which is following him, or to his subjects. Further, he says that an entirely good man passing from happiness to misery will look odious. Okay, if a man is very good and not having a single sin, yet he is going to happiness to misery, will appear very odious. So a good character, because of some reason, will be passing on from happiness to misery, and that is what is, what you call, brings sympathy in us. If a perfect man is passing from happiness to misery, that will look odious. And of course, that there is a term which, what you say, um, Aristotle gives to this lack in the good man, etc. We will discuss when we come to that term. Because if we think that a perfect good man is passing from misery, happiness to misery, it affects our sense of justice. There is a sense of justice that a good man is being punished means we'll get. Our sense of justice will get affected. Okay. Aristotle's concept of goodness has no moralistic or didactic implications. See, this is moral, immoral, or logical, illogical. Like that, Aristotle never stated. He states that his goodness is in action only. If the desired end brings a good result, that turns to be a good action. Okay, even if you desire for a good end, sometimes that good end may not be achieved, and at that time you will not become a failure, or you will not become a bad person. The good person will not become a bad person. So because the desired end is not achieved, this good person will be going from happiness to misery. And then goodness for him involves seriousness, and a good character passing from happiness to misery causes tragic action, as I have already explained to you. If an evil man is shown passing from happiness to misery, or vice versa, Aristotle says that it looks horrible and odious. If a evil character, if a bad man is shown passing from happiness to misery, it will not bring a tragic pleasure in us, and it will be very odious to look also. And the next point, or next characteristic of the character is appropriateness of character. To what it should be appropriate, to use Telugu here, appropriate and saripoinda, and sari ainada, like that. If the character is suitable to somewhat, by this Aristotle means that character should be fitting to the status. Actually, the status is political and social, as that was defined by law, by custom, and by function. So when he says that a character should be appropriate, he keeps in his mind the status of political status or social status, which which is defined by law or by custom. Okay. The relation of character to status needs consideration in two aspects. How the status is decided. One is the practice in a given environment. It is like, rather than practice, we can hear, House used this word practice in his lectures. We can say, our what you say, our way of doing things, our way of doing things, or our usual practice. Usual practice, for example, you take a slave. Okay, a slave who is born and brought up in the environment of slave families, etc., will behave like a slave only. That is what Aristotle believes. And then if you take a monarch, take for example Alexander is the son of a king. So his way of behaving will be different from the way slave behaves. Okay, this is equivalent to a kind of environment which we talk. You say that people develop their characters not only because of their family members like mother, father, or elders, etc., but also because of the environment in which they live. Okay, so the modern theory of environment, of course, is there when he talks about this aspect of practice or usual way of doing things. So a slave may not be acting like a monarch, or a monarch may not be acting like the slave, or thinking like that is where the poets, while designing the or developing the characters or sketching the characters, should remember this or should keep in mind the status of the character, of the dramatic personage, which the personage which he is trying to develop. Okay. The next, he says, secondly, the conception of legal status that was fundamental to the whole organization of society. So whether it is legal or illegal, etc. And a typical tragedy does not necessarily involve anything of that kind that would be a breach of the status, according to Aristotle. Legal status is very important during his time, the Aristotle's time, because everything is defined legally. And within these two aspects, the poet has to develop his characterization. So, considering the aspect of practice and considering the concept of legal status, Aristotle thinks that the poet has to develop his characterization. But even then, they say they will have, the poets will have the freedom to what you say, create in a innovative or creative manner. Okay. House says that, as other translators say, Aristotle's appropriateness is not to fit the characters to gender or class. Like if you want to create a womanly man or women, or a manly women, etc., etc., it is not like that. Or Aristotle is not sticking to the class differences also. Okay. Of course, this adherence to the status actually should be understood with those conditions that were prevalent during Aristotle's time. So Aristotle only means to say that the character that the poet is designing or developing in a tragedy should be appropriate in certain aspects, these aspects as we have discussed. And the next thing is likeness of character. This is the third characteristic of the character, is the being like. But Aristotle stated in his Poetics that the character is the being like, but he did not specify like what. So different translators have given different what you say, views regarding this. Say Bywater is one of the translators of Aristotle's Poetics. He says that it is likeness to the original. So to the original, as I used to say, literature is taken from the society. So it is the original society, original people, etc. Maybe likeness is like the original. And Butcher, another translator of Aristotle, he says that thirdly, the character must be true to life. So the character must be true to life means like us only, perhaps. And further, Humphrey House says that if we follow the translations of Butcher and Bywater, it becomes obvious that the poet's skill will not get exhibited if he is just showing the reality. But the answer here is, Aristotle says that tragedy will not simply show the characters just like ourselves, but it may show worse than ourselves or better than ourselves. So, yet, whatever it is, Aristotle feels that the characters should have, to bring in the tragic action, they should be like the suffering human beings only, the common man or the common people. And the third one, okay, likeness is over. Now the fourth one is consistency. Very little is said about that, and it is only to maintain the consistency in the characters of the dramatic personage. The character must be shown as a whole. So it should not be shown in pieces. It should be shown in as a whole. and development must take place according to intelligible principles, as we discussed in probability and necessity. See whether the certain set portrayal of a character is good or not. What they say and what they do should be consistent in their tragedy. Throughout the tragedy, it should be there. Throughout the tragedy, a character's bent of habit or tendency should be maintained consistently. We cannot show transformations from good to bad or bad to good so easily. At the end of the tragedy or at the end of a movie only, you can see that the bad may change their nature, or sometimes good may also change their nature, which is shown very rarely. This type of what you say shifting from one nature to the other, one habit to the other, is not accepted by Aristotle, and he says that the poet should take care in maintaining the consistency in developing the character. And but for the momentary conflict passions that may occur in the development of the character. So consistency is to maintain a equal tempo in developing the character. The character may evolve in the course of the drama, but not in such a manner that he or she will appear as a complete contrast to from the beginning to the end. Okay, that should not be there. These are the four qualities or characters that are required to understand the relation between the tragic action and the character. So unless the characters are good, unless the characters are appropriate, and unless they are like the reality or original, etc., unless they have consistency, you cannot understand, you cannot have an effective tragic action that is taking place in a tragedy. Okay, this is where I conclude this lecture. I'll be sharing another one. Please keep going through these lectures again and again. As I have told you earlier, we'll be having an online examination with multiple choice questions because hostels will not be opened because the government did not give instructions. So you cannot come and write exam in physical examination will not be there. So let us you please keep preparing, listening to all the lectures of all the teachers, so that you will be able to write the Google form online. We'll be giving a very limited time only. Try to read, because your end examinations will also come soon. If you neglect, you will have a difficulty in writing them. Okay, have a nice time.